Hello there! Today we have two real-life horror stories on the horizon, but before we begin, I would like to give thanks to NorthWarden and RudeBird. Your stories are much appreciated. And fair warning, you may never look at a scarecrow again the same way. I too apologize. Let's begin, shall we? This happened to me when I was 12 or so. I still think about it sometimes, and it really unsettles me. My family owned several acres of corn in Iowa. Birds are actually pretty smart, so my mom made some really realistic scarecrows in order to fool them. The scarecrows had glass eyes glued onto their faces. They wore white gloves and had old boots with fat bellies made of hay. When the wind blew, their skinny arms would dangle and jerk as if they were dancing. The scarecrows really creeped me out, but I tried to act manly like all 12-year-old boys did. I was not allowed to leave the house at night. When I asked why, my mother would just give me some vague excuse about dangerous hobos living in the woods. But one night I snuck out to see a girl who lives 2 miles down the road. I climbed into the hayloft of her dad's barn and waited for her, but she never showed up. Finally, I left. I walked through a cornfield alone. Just as I passed by a scarecrow, I heard a noise. The scarecrow was breathing. I will never forget that noise as long as I live. It was a low hiss like someone inhaling through a mouthful of hay and cloth. It turned its head towards me in the windy day. The scarecrow's arms were twitching horribly like a person convulsing. I was so scared, I bolted straight out of there. I ran the rest of the way home and crawled into my bedroom window and closed it after me. My room was dark. I stared out into the field. Heart pounding, I reached for the flashlight in my nightstand. With shaking hands, I pointed it out the window into the darkness outside. A form shuffled out of the cornfield. It wasn't the scarecrow, though. It was a man, an old hobo that I recognized. He walked down past the cornfield and disappeared into the woods. I hid under my covers. It was hot and hard to breathe, but I was pretty sure that I successfully escaped. The neighborhood girl went missing the very next day, conveniently. My mother was convinced that the old hobo had kidnapped her, but sadly, the police never found a trace. That summer, the area around the scarecrow began to stink. It was a thick smell that coated your lungs, like iron rot and stinkweed. We ignored it as long as we could, but at these days, it got hotter and hotter. The smell got worse, and eventually my mother told me to take the scarecrow down. The scarecrow's head was a burlap sack stuffed full of hay. I faced my fear. With trembling hands, I cut the rope around the scarecrow's neck. I reached up and removed the sack. A human face stared back at me. It was the corpse of the neighborhood girl that went missing. Her face was bloated and her eyes were 2 sunken pits of rot. And her mouth was stuffed full of hay. I always thought of myself as a brave person, that I would react heroically in a crisis like my favorite fictional characters would, that I would altruistically throw myself into a dangerous situation to save another person's life. I prided myself on this and often looked down on people who stood by in a situation when they could have helped someone in some way. I had myself convinced that I was a person who could take action. Yes, I was a newsworthy hero just waiting for the chance to shine. The noise I heard last night changed my mind. It was a fairly loud bang, and I thought it might have been a bird or something that had miscalculated its own trajectory and divided into my window. I live on the 9th floor of my building, so I didn't know what else it could have been. That satisfied my mind until I heard it again. I froze. The angry noises were separated by short pauses, short, excruciating pauses, in which I had just enough time to agonize over the possibility that it was all over again, only to be startled by another instance. I've been watching some murder mystery reality show, and I was too petrified to turn it off. I was paralyzed by the fear I felt. It seems silly to be that afraid that you cannot remove yourself from a situation that you find so terrifying, but it happened. I couldn't see anything through my curtains, and I think I was grateful. What could possibly be hitting my window at that height and repeating so consistently? Had some serial killer somehow scaled a building looking for me? Trying to lure me to the window with odd noises? Was a flying spirit of death itself lethargically rapping on my window to bring me doom? My brain was on fire and my body essentially on ice. So, I was remaining in my bed, propped up by a few pillows, simultaneously listening to a monotone narrator speak about a woman that was murdered in her own bed, and to what sounded like a lazy kick hitting the tough glass of my bedroom window. It went on for a long time. I almost drummed up the courage to move a couple of times, only to have that effort thwarted by my own imagination. My brain singing me dark songs of what could be lurking behind that glass. All the while, the same brain was reprimanding me for being such a coward. Maybe I could only manage to jump in and be a hero if someone else is in trouble. That's what I thought, at least. I couldn't move for hours while the sound continued. I wanted to look out the window, but the fear of what might be on the other side stopped me from moving even my own fingers. Eventually, the sound had become less frequent and then completely stopped. After a couple hours, I managed to grab my remote and turn off the television. Despite the uneasiness I felt in my own bed, I somehow drifted off. I awoke early the next morning to a bustling of voices and machinery outside, and a knock at my door. The police officer who greeted me said plainly that the woman in the apartment above me had hung herself last night. He went on to explain that she had suffered quite a bit as her neck didn't snap on the way down. The officer also said that when the woman was spotted this morning, her feet had been dangling right by the top side of my bedroom window. The officer asked me if I had heard any strange noises. I'm glad to see you guys made it out of those horrors. I hope you've enjoyed those stories. If you did, you know what to do if you want to see more chilling content. I'll be uploading quite consistently. As you can tell, it's a crazy world out there, so everyone stay safe. Until next time.